Hello, Nate. How are you doing?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing very, very well. Where are you right now?
I am in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where I live and work. Yeah,
And how's everything going with the orchestra? Are you guys starting to play concerts again, or?
we're getting close. Next week we start our first real set of performances again. So that's
That's exciting.
very, very exciting. Yes.
Yes, yes. Um, so, Tell us a little bit about this Edgar Meyer duo that you guys played back in, I think, what was it, 2017?
I
Something
think
like
so. That sounds right. 2017 or 18. Yeah. So Edgar Meyer is, for those who aren't aware, he's a bass player and composer. Does a lot of stuff across genres. He's a classical bass player, but also does a lot of bluegrass. Plays with Chris Thile, mandolin, um, but also Mark O'Connor, fiddle player, but also Yo-Yo Ma and all that. So his music is also really kind of a hybrid of all that stuff in a way. Which I think is just the coolest thing. I mean, his music is some of the most fun stuff to play. Not only is it, of course, really well written for bass, but some of the rhythmical intricacy is to a level that you don't find every day in classical music, and it just makes it real fun to perform. I mean, it's a little bit of a thrill ride because if you get just the slightest bit off, you got to hang on for dear life. Um, but Edgar Meyer was also a teacher of mine during my undergrad, so I got the chance to learn a lot from him personally and get to know him and his music well. And Joel, the violinist for this performance, actually, his quartet went on tour performing Edgar Meyer's quintet as well. So he was able to be familiar with the music, which was a big help and yeah, made a difference because it's not the same stuff that we end up playing every day. That's for sure.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. Did you have you ever played this piece for Edgar Meyer for your teacher?
I have before, yeah. I did it for my graduation recital in school. So I performed it for him a few times, getting ready for that. He's very particular. I mean, he's open, for his students. He's very encouraging, but it's demanding in a way that, especially like the rhythmical stuff, like I mentioned, that we're not asked to be necessarily as precise as in the musical world that he lives in. So it's definitely a different sort of standard, but it's super fun and great, really great at developing that skill as well.
Yeah. And what was he like as a teacher?
Edgar is really a genius in every way. He's interesting to work with as a teacher because things can be so abstract at times in terms of like his musical thoughts, in a way that I always loved, and I think a lot of his students value because it gets you thinking about the big picture.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, if there's something in the music where you're just like you need a fingering or you need to figure out how to play something, he's able to offer as much concrete help and solutions that you would never come up with on your own. So it's really just he's got such a brilliant musical mind to be able to tap into that I certainly feel lucky to have that. There's not a lot of bass players that I've met who have a mind that really works like his. So I consider myself very lucky to have had that opportunity.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, so you and Joel went to school together.
Yes, we went to school. I think we overlapped for a couple of years. So yeah, he graduated a little bit before I did, but we were in school together a bit. Yeah.
And actually, kind of a fun little triangle. You and I went to the same high school, but you were a freshman when I was a senior, maybe something like
Something
that.
like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I actually knew your sister Autumn. She was in the same class as me. And then at the same time, I was studying with the Vamoses in Chicago with Siwoo and Joel. And so I knew Joel at the same time, when I first kind of met you, and then it kind of
That's right.
comes
Yeah.
around in a big circle. It's amazing.
It's amazing. It's amazing how small the music world can be sometimes.
Yeah. I remember actually that summer that you guys played, we did a round table with students from Chamber Music Connection. And one of the students asked us, what's your biggest advice to young students? And I remember Joel saying very clearly, just be nice, because these people come back to you in your life. You know, in classical music, it's so small that you just have to make sure you're nice to everybody and you treat everyone, you know, properly, because, you know, 10 years down the road, you're going to be playing, you know, in a duo with them at a, you know, at a music festival.
It's so true. I mean, you know, me having gone through a school for my undergrad of like 140, 150 people, like people, you get to know people and you remember, you know, years later. And same thing, you know, you and me went to high school together. Jeff Myers, another, you know, big VIVO member and personality, we also went to high school together. All the same place, Upper Arlington. Same for Ted, our executive director. So like these names come back around, you know, even years later. So it definitely is beneficial to just treat other people well. It's probably true for every walk of life, but somehow the music world seems to remember a little bit more.
Yeah. And actually, speaking of CMC, you did CMC, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. CMC was it's such a fantastic opportunity, especially as a bass player, that we don't get to play chamber music every day. You know, so even for something like VIVO, to have a level of comfort of having some experience with chamber music and not just delve into it and be like, okay, here's other people who have spent, you know, 10 plus years of their life, you know, perfecting the art of chamber music, and here am I, who's like a bass player who's never done it before. It was having that opportunity and having some of that experience is super valuable.
Yeah. And what was it like for you growing up in Columbus as a bass player, and you know, kind of in your high school years, and you know, I don't know, when did you finally decide you wanted to become a professional bass player? What led you to take that road?
That's a tough question. I mean, when I was in even middle school, I knew that I loved playing, and I had an inkling that I wanted to do something with music in my life, but I never figured I would be good enough to be a performing musician professionally. I mean, it just, in that middle school age, it never crossed my mind, you know, like it's ends up being such a small sample size of musicians that end up actually getting to do it professionally. So it never crossed my mind to be a professional performer until I started progressing. But Columbus, you know, it's not, people think of sort of all the talent coming out of big cities like New York, Chicago, like you said, going up to Chicago to study there. Even Philadelphia's got a good music scene for young players to learn from. People don't always assume that to be the case about Columbus, but I had as good of private teachers as I could have asked for anywhere. John Pellegrino and Dr. Paul Robinson, that I don't think I would have been better off in terms of private instruction anywhere in the country or in the world. And then you add on top of that, you know, our high school had such a fantastic string orchestra program. CMC is not, Chamber Music Connection, like you mentioned, is not a resource that every city or every town has to be able to have those chamber music experiences. So there's just a lot that Columbus has to offer for young musicians as they're growing up, and I definitely would not be where I am now with the people that you know helped me along the way.
Of course, I think we all feel that way. Siwoo and Jeff and Ted, you know, we all feel that way about Columbus. It's amazing, you know, the number of artists who have come out of Columbus, Ohio.
It really is.
From our age, and the next generation. You know, I was teaching at a small music festival here in France last year, and I got about 40 or 50 viola applicants. And, you know, they send their recordings, they send their tapes, and I got to go listen through each one of them. And the best violist was from Columbus, Ohio. That's the violist.
It really is kind of a hotbed that no one would ever think of.
Yeah.
for classical music talent, but it's a wonderful thing, and that's why part of the reason why VIVO is able to happen and why it's in Columbus. So
And what is your I guess it's kind of a funny question. What are your memories from playing this piece, from playing the Edgar Meyer duo?
I think, like I said earlier, anytime I've played his music, it's such a thrill ride. The amount of focus that's required for rhythmic accuracy, alone when you're also worrying about just trying to play all the notes and remembering everything. Is just it's so engaging mentally. You know what I mean? Like I had played it enough that I had it more or less memorized, and even that, like if you check out, if you even think about checking out for a half a second, you're dead in the water. You know. So it's just there's it just requires a sort of different level of mental engagement than a lot of pieces. Now I sound like I just check out and, you know, and super lazy about every other thing that I play, but it really is different somehow. I mean, a lot of Stravinsky is similar in this way, you know, not just Rite of Spring, but something like L'Histoire du Soldat is, you know, the meters are all over the place. And as a bass player, you're constantly playing in one meter and everyone else is shifting. And it's like, it's stressful. And without the experience, it's just terrifying. But once you get used to it, it's really, really fun. Yeah.
I think that's from, you know, from watching the video again, you know, after all these years and seeing it is, it's funny you say all of that, because the thing that pops out to me is how much fun you guys are having when you're on stage. And I think that's one of the, you know, for our audience, one of the interesting things to find out is actually what's going on in our heads as we're playing. You know, it's not.
Yeah, absolutely. And sort of the neat thing is, like, you know, for people who haven't heard the piece yet, as I'm talking now, I make it sound like it's some ridiculously esoteric piece of contemporary music, and it's not. It's really much closer to bluegrass. Like, you would never know what's going on in our minds as we're playing it, because it in some ways really kind of sounds fairly simple. And really, you know, down to earth. But yeah, that's, I think, what's so amazing about it. You know, it's as intricate as any classical music, any contemporary thing you'll find. But it's just, it sounds like a fun piece that two people are jamming on together.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's, I mean, it's a fantastic piece and super exciting, exhilarating, and you guys just, you know, rock the hell out of it. So. I'm excited for our audience to hear that.
Yeah, me too. It's an enjoyable piece.